Are you ready to embrace a healthier, more vibrant life? Look no further than With Joy, a transformative movement and nutrition program that goes beyond the ordinary. With Joy is not just a program, it's a movement. We believe that true wellness encompasses mind, body, and spirit. Our approach is rooted in compassion care, tailored to each individual. We're here to elevate you to a place of health, wellness, and healing. Whether you're a seasoned athlete or just starting your fitness journey, we've got something for you. Our comprehensive programs include strength, mobility, endurance, and conditioning to elevate your fitness, recovery and recuperation for healing, and nutrition wellness plans to fuel your body for optimal performance. Check out our show notes for more information and links to our programs. Join the With Joy movement today and discover a whole new way to thrive.
Hi, I'm Joy Han Silva.
And I'm Laura Han Segundo Collins.
And welcome to Hahnacity.
It's just a joy to have my once physical therapist turned brother-in-law, Linsey Dicks, here. What's really interesting, I think, is that we've never debriefed our time together during those years to hear your take on it, because I think so much of my memory has to do with Natalie and coaches, but you were absolutely part of my support and healing. So, Linsey, I love you and thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome. It's my honor.
So if you could share with everybody, I mean, what a wild journey that you had to go from South Africa to Houston, Texas. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I grew up in South Africa. I worked there as a physical therapist, or graduated, trained as a physical therapist at the University of Cape Town. I did 2 years of military service. I worked mostly as a physical therapist during that time. And then I got into sports, and I started doing ultramarathons, and I was treating long-distance runners, the elite long-distance runners in South Africa. I started doing canoe marathons and triathlons, and really developed a strong interest in sports injuries. Back then, there was no computers, no internet, and so we had a monthly periodical that would come out, and a South African Physiotherapy Journal. And in the back page, there was an ad to come and work in Houston, Texas at the 1960 Sports Medicine Clinic. And so I decided, heck, I'm going to write off and apply for that and see what happens. And they said they would give you, pay you a salary, there'd be a 1-year contract, and they'd fly you out and arrange all the work visas and everything. So I submitted for that back and forth through the snail mail. They said, yes, I'd love to have you. We think you'd be great. And so the process was supposed to all be tied up, and I was supposed to fly out in May of 1989, and I was going to arrive there, I think in July or August. And I was going to spend about a couple of weeks visiting my brother, who was in England at the time. And I ended up staying in London for almost 9 months because it took so long for the visas to come through. Anyway, I eventually arrived in Houston, Texas on February 14th of 1990. I came to the 1960 Sports Medicine Center the next morning, and I got to meet my current wife, Natalie Segundo, who was working there as a receptionist, and she was crying the first day I met her. And I can remember mascara falling down her eyes, and she was a bit of a hot mess. And I had no idea what was going on. So before long, I had this delightful young lady become my patient, and that was Laura Segundo. And I thought Natalie was Laura's mother. I didn't realize Natalie was Laura's sister. Natalie and I started dating, and I started finding out a little more about Laura. But certainly as my patient, I just was doing what the doctors had requested me to do and trying to treat her rehabilitation after having surgery on her elbow. She had osteochondritis of the elbow and trying to regain her range of motion and her strength back. I vaguely recall that she was training and to be in tip-top shape for the 92 Olympic Games. She had just finished Worlds, I think. She was noticeably devastated. I noticed Laura was not the usual cheerful young girl, because she was about 13 at the time, 12 or 13, I think.
I think it was 12.
And a 12-year-old gymnast looks like about a 9-year-old, if that. There's no development, there's no nothing. And Laura was small in stature as well. She was only about 4 foot something, but just full of muscles, very athletic, very strong, very capable. Her whole focus of life was on her abilities as a gymnast, and her inability to perform as a gymnast was clearly affecting her psyche. And so I would try and draw her out. I would try and get her to laugh and respond to me and connect with me. And also complicated by the fact that I was developing an interest in a sister. And then the more I developed an interest in a sister who was Laura's center of her universe, Laura was Natalie's center of the universe and vice versa. And so I was like the third wheel trying to wedge my way in there. And Laura didn't respond too kindly to that. And so...
Sorry.
Yeah.
It was a hard-earned love.
Yeah, it was. It was funny. But most certainly I persisted and I did the very best I could for her as a therapist. Unfortunately, Laura's elbow never really... I mean, she recovered well enough to try to start up again, but I think they put her back to her activities way too soon, and she re-injured that elbow and was never able to recover from it. But in that time, between her initial injury, she was still going back to training, and she used to train twice a day, 6 days a week. She had to go to a special school because she was only able to go to school for a certain number of hours a day. I remember she wasn't allowed to have pizza or ice cream. She was had a very restrictive diet, and it was kind of funny. I went to visit them at their house one day, and they had this Philadelphia cream cheese, which I'd never seen before I came to South Africa. Didn't have that kind of stuff. And I made myself a slice of bread, and I put Philadelphia cream cheese on it and spread it on pretty thick. And I can remember Laura came in and gave me such a hard time. Why are you eating all my cream cheese? But it was one of the few things that she was allowed to eat was cream cheese. But yeah,
Poor Lynn, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and Laura had this. She lived in the loft. Natalie and Laura lived in a little apartment on a road called Sugar Pine Road.
Sugar Pine.
Sugar Pine Road, yeah, 50 Sugar Pine Road.
Holy crap, you have a good memory.
And she lived in the loft upstairs, and she had hundreds of bloody Garfield bears. And Laura was very messy, so they were all over the place. But I used to go and visit there occasionally, and I would go with Natalie to the trainings. And it was actually kind of interesting. I can remember going to the first training. I think I went with Natalie to go and pick Laura up after a training, or near the end of a training. There was like a view room for parents and for people who were picking up the kids. And I was in that view room and watching these kids, and everything looked, pretty professional, and seeing all these kids running around doing their thing. They were all very, very talented young kids. And I can remember seeing, Coach Newman in there, and I always thought to myself, gosh, that guy's pretty hard on the damn kids. He'd be shouting, he'd be pretty damn firm. And then also intermixed with sort of a hand on the shoulder connection and getting down at their level and talking to them. So it was like this juxtaposition between screaming and shouting on occasion to getting down at people's levels and identifying with them. But the thing that really struck me the most was the comments amongst the parents. I mean, there were people there that they didn't know who I was, and I would overhear them talking about Laura Segundo. And somebody said, "Oh, did you know she got injured? Did you know she's in trouble? And did you know this? And did you know that?" And they would say these comments with glee in their voices, and I retrospectively thought it through, and they were just excited about the fact that there was one less person to compete with their daughter for a very few select spots on the Olympic team that was coming up. And so I just found it to be the most toxic environment from just the parents' perspective. And then come to find out that parents were sleeping with the coaches to curry favor with their children, and the parents would do almost anything to get the coaches to pay more attention to their child than someone else's child. And now here's Natalie, who's 22 or something at the time, and pretty naive, and grew up in a nice, conservative Christian environment, and she wasn't going to be doing anything that would be so overtly, I'm going to try and manipulate a circumstance or situation or curry favor or gain favor with the coach. So she was just always polite with the coaches and stuff. So poor old Laura didn't have the benefit of a parent. She had the benefit of a sister, absolutely, but didn't have the benefit of a more authoritarian parent perspective, particularly a male or a female up there, to really represent her with the coaches. And I found myself starting to wonder, hey, I think I'm going to go in there and kick this guy's ass or something and give him something to think about, because I could tell from even just the little I saw that the way the coaches interacted with the children, the way the parents spoke, and the competition between the parents was just quite toxic and not a healthy environment at all. Then I'd hear about these stories that, I'd want to go and have a little Caesar's pizza, and Natalie would say, "Oh, we can't go there because Laura's not allowed to eat pizza." And I love pizza. Again, something you didn't get in South Africa. I grew up in the boonies. And then I can remember Laura had to go to these camps, and she would go to Caroli's farm. He had like a big ranch. They would have to get weighed like every day, and they weren't allowed to be over a certain weight. There wasn't a friggin' ounce of fat on that little girl.
No.
They had such these reduced calorie diets, and the kids would try and sneak some stuff in their bags, some just, snacks to eat and stuff, and their bags would be searched, and all their stuff would be confiscated. I mean, it was like living in a concentration camp.
Mm-hmm.
Get up early, go training, come back, meager meals to eat. There was nothing for them to look forward to other than praise and appreciation from their coaches, which would be sparse and not a whole great deal of it. So you think about a kid at the most formative years of life where everything is about trying to figure out who you are, how I think, and that all comes through positive reinforcement. And most of what you're getting is restrictions, limitations, and a lot of negative reinforcement with an occasional sporadic positive reinforcement if you really kicked ass and did something really well. And so the most elite people and the most capable people were the ones that probably got a little more of the positive reinforcement. But I don't even think there was any clear winners at that point because everyone was uncertain about their spot on the team and whether they were going to make it or not. Laura had a little friend called Mariana who used to train with her. And Mariana's parents lived in the same apartment block there. Well, Mariana's mum, I got to meet her dad a couple of times too. Laura and Mariana would have fun together, and they would come and spy on Natalie and I. We would be, making out in the bedroom or something. They'd be pushing straws under the door and trying to listen to us. But
We would scream at you. You're trying to make a straw horn.
Yeah.
That's what we call it.
So it was always good for me to see Laura have some giggles and laughs with her friends. But the moment she would be in that environment in the gym and picking her up and then her pain and her inability to sort of function the way she would, and she was so talented. My God, she was so talented. It was just heartbreaking for me to watch her personality and character not blossom in the way that I thought it could. And I said to Natalie, I said, I got no idea why you keep doing this. In fact, when Laura actually finally quit, to me, it was like a huge relief. It was, oh my God, she's actually finally going to be able to enjoy life and have fun like a kid should have. I mean, this just struck me. She didn't have any damn fun or very, very little fun in her life.
How long did it take you to bring that up to Nat? Like, how long did you witness those things in order for you to say, why do you do this?
This probably took about 9 months to a year. Because, I didn't start dating Natalie we started dating probably about 3 or 4 months after we met. I think we moved in after about a year, about 9-10 months together, which poor little Laura had to tolerate and endure me there. But then it probably wasn't.
I think I liked you by then, though.
Yeah,
Let's be honest. I liked you by then.
Watching her too and advocating for her.
I have to share because it sounds like I didn't like Linsey when you two started. I didn't. I did it because there was somebody that she was interested in. He broke her heart, and that's probably where the tears were. So it's very, very protective of her. And here you come along, this good-looking dude who's going to be my physical therapist and has all this knowledge. But yeah, I did make you work for it. One day, I think you two are on the verge of breaking up, probably because I was giving you such a hard time. And she said, with tears in her eyes, we got into an argument tonight. And I was like, good, in my head. And she said, because Linsey wanted to buy you this giant Garfield clock, because I had a very, very healthy, I'd like to say healthy obsession with Garfield. Loved all things Garfield and Odie. I can't remember how much she said it was, but in my head, that was like, you were going to try to spend $1 million. That moment, my heart just broke because I thought, no person should buy my love like that. That's not cool. Like all the things that you had tried to do to make me feel cared for, or that you just told me that you liked me, flooded my head all at the same time. And my heart just opened up. And I said, from now on, this guy is a keeper. You came in not too long after, and I think I was like, hi, Linsey. And you were like, what is
the hell
wrong?
happened?
She's sick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lindsay, I have another question for you. Is Laura the only child athlete or gymnast that you worked with?
No, there were a couple of other gymnasts. To be honest with you, I couldn't remember any of them with any grand detail because even though I worked at the sports injuries clinic, the bulk of our patients were mostly your sort of typical run-of-the-mill adult patients, people rehabbing from weekend warrior kind of stuff. But a lot of the gymnasts did come to that gym, and so we would treat them for shin splints, various injuries here and there.
Based on what you witness working with these girls in terms of their bodies and what they went through
Mm-hmm.
on a regular basis, like your medical outlook on that, what did you think? Laura coming to you with her elbows at 12.
Yeah.
With those types of injuries, what did you think with your medical opinion?
Most certainly with Laura's elbow, my thinking at the time was, oh my gosh, firstly, why did they take so long to figure out what the hell was going on and do surgery? And why did they put her back to doing these really high pressure, handsprings on your elbow when your elbow is not fully healed? And I understand the timing and they were trying to get her ready for the Olympic Games. But thinking to myself, and I probably wasn't as strong an advocate as I probably should have been, which is go and actually even speak to the doctor and saying, what are you guys thinking? Why would you release her to go and do something that she's not ready for? I understand elite gymnastics and elite rehab, but back then there wasn't that much technology and sophistication. And I knew, based on my training, how long it takes for people to get back from after an injury. And she didn't even have full range of motion, and they wanted her back to start doing things, and there was still swelling, and there was lots of pain. So when you've got pain, you can't just work through the pain, not with something like that. So it always struck me with those patients just how fast they wanted everyone back in activity, right? It was like, here's the normal healing time. We want you to cut it in half. And there was always this immense pressure. Do whatever you can. Do more therapy, make it happen, do more, faster therapy, quicker therapy, more frequent therapy, more of this, more of that to try and get the folks to come back to resume their former performance levels. And so you keep doing that, and the injuries become chronic, long-standing problems. And Laura, to this day, can't straighten it all out.
Right. I have one more follow-up on that, because Laura and I talk about this a lot with gymnastics, because it's like a professional sport when you're at that level. You're at the highest peak, right? And the difference is Laura is 12 at the peak of her level, where other professional athletes are full-grown adults. And so looking at it as a physical therapist, when you're working with Laura, who's 12, are you treating her like a 12-year-old child? Or are we treating her like she's a professional athlete, trying to prepare her to get ready for her next competition?
Both. You're doing both, and particularly for Laura. Because I saw her as my girlfriend's sister, and it was like there's a special part of her. I saw her through that lens. I saw her as a 12-year-old. I would see her playing with Mariana, running around and being giggly and silly like a 12-year-old would be.
Yeah.
And yet, when I saw her in the gym practicing, she was performing at an elite level, which was like, oh my God, this person's a machine.
Right.
And she is just absolutely, the feats and the things that she could do, it was just like mind-boggling. And so when you treated somebody like that as a patient, particularly Laura, it was like I would see her as a 12-year-old, and I would also see her as this, in retrospect, you think about it, it's kind of stupid. I even thought about it that way. But because she was so capable physically, you thought she would be capable mentally and emotionally. And it didn't really, you extrapolate, right? You sort of think, well, man, this person is so gifted in this, and they're so capable at this, they're so advanced in this, then they must be advanced mentally, emotionally as well. And so I probably didn't pay enough attention to the fact that this was a 12-year-old psyche, a 12-year-old, in fact, probably even less than that, because she'd not really got to ever experience being a 12-year-old. And so she was probably behind in her emotional and psychological development. And yet, physically, she was demonstrating capabilities that most people in the world never ever get to.
That's a really good point. I did not think about that in many ways.
Yeah.
Are you overwhelmed, stuck, maybe disconnected in your relationship? Would you like to find more clarity and balance? Look no further than Laura Collins, LCSW, providing individual and couples counseling with warmth and empathy, a safe space to navigate life's challenges and connect you with your shine. Laura also specializes in working with current and former athletes and coaches, performance anxiety to post-competition transition. She understands the unique mental demands of the sports world. Curious to dive deep? Check out the links in our show notes for additional information about our practice and how we can support you in your journey.
Whew. I'm getting a little flooded with memories right now. My apologies for being on the quiet side. I do think of that 1960 sports medicine place because I spent so much time there. I think I was there almost every day.
Daily. Yep.
I was with you, Linz, in recovery stuff, and my sweet James, who was helping me with endurance. I was very small. I was very skinny. Didn't have a lot of stamina. So I think his job was to help me build that. It also could have been, I was 12. It was like very small, but he was so awesome. When I think of 1960, I think of a very comforting, soothing place. I remember falling on beam once and I hit at an angle where I had this enormous bruise. I mean, it was so huge that the middle of it was white. And every day, multiple therapists would dig in there and loosen it up. Otherwise, they were afraid it was going to calcify. I remember holding onto a pillow, crying because they had to dig into the middle of this bruise. The tears, but afterwards, all the hugs. So many hugs. It was such a loving place.
Yeah, I remember those times. I remember in some of the treatments we had to put you through, and I mean, we'd push you to your limits in terms of pain. And I wouldn't do that with any other patient, but there was just so much pressure to get these elite gymnasts back up to speed and back onto the track and back into training. I don't know how you endured all of that, but again, that's not what 12-year-olds should be made to do, right?
Yeah.
Well, you're also in a unique spot, Linsey, because not only are you working with these children, but you are in the viewing room watching what they're doing and their capabilities. So you have this insight. You're sort of like this spy that can see all angles, which is kind of crazy that you had that perspective, which was really unique.
Yeah. At the time, I probably didn't. I wish I knew then what I know now in the context of just human beings and what motivates us, how we function, what's normal and what's not normal, actually, because even as a 25-year-old, I mean, I'd only been working as a physical therapist for 4 years. So I didn't have like tons of experience. I'd only grown up and lived in South Africa. I didn't have international experience. Actually, I worked a little bit in London, but I only knew what I knew. I didn't know what I didn't know. I know a heck of a lot more now. And so knowing what I know now would have intervened in a whole different way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I will say this. I love you dearly. Those memories that I have of Houston and of Linsey, like I said, it was a very hard-earned love and relationship.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, it's all worked out very well. When Laura had to quit gymnastics and she went back to high school, then eventually got into diving and good enough to get a full ride to Berkeley. And that was UCLA rather, not Berkeley, UCLA. The other one.
The other one, yeah.
Where my daughters want to go. But that was at least some redemption, but it always just left me the void where Laura went back to, because Natalie and I continued to live in Houston for probably about a year after Laura left. And it was a big void that she left there. It was quiet without her.
Yeah.
Sure.
It was a time. It was a chapter that ended very abruptly in many ways. And then, going back home to Arcadia was like, okay, now perform as a normal child. And that was a whole other bag to have to deal with. But that time really informed how I am as an aunt and as a parent. There's a lot of healing that is currently happening for me because my kids are at the same ages right now.
I'm sure it's made you a better mom.
I definitely can see bullshit a mile away. There is no adult that's going to be treating my kids like that. Absolutely not. Yeah.
One of the things that just strikes me, because I remember Joy was into gymnastics too. And when I was living here in Northern California, eventually Natalie and I moved over up here, and Joy joined. She was doing gymnastics, and we went and visited her a couple of times up in Sacramento. And I can remember thinking to myself, what in God's green earth ever possesses Joy to want to do the same thing, put herself through the same crap, the same nonsense, with the same damn coach? Because it was Rick Newman, right? So
There's
Rick Newman.
tons of questions with that one too.
Yeah, he actually came and visited Natalie and I when we were up here, and I got to see him, and it was kind of weird and awkward, but it was sort of half weird and awkward and half sort of, okay, it was nice of him to come maybe look us up kind of thing. But then he was Joy's coach, and I can remember just going and visiting Joy a couple of times, and Joy stayed with us a couple of weekends, and I can remember just thinking to myself, golly, why? I mean, I guess it's hard when you're in it and you're so talented and you're capable. It's almost like, do you even know that you have choice? Do you even know that you could choose to not do this? And there's so much pressure because your parents have invested so much time and so much energy and so much money into this. There's so much hope. Your parents live vicariously through you. I mean, I used to think to myself, why would parents ever put their children through this? And it's affected me in terms of my kids, right? Because now, granted, my kids were never that talented I mean, I think they're talented at everything they do, but they're not at that elite sort of level. So Laura and Joy had elite capability. When you see that, then you want to encourage it. But at what point does encouragement go to coercion and go to manipulation? And then the guilt on the child's part. Well, my parents have already done so much for me. Now I've got to do this. And I think the parents contribute to that with unintended words like, hey, I've already done this. You can't stop now. You got to keep going and you got to do more. Man, it's given me great insight in terms of my children. I've never pushed them. And now, as they've gotten older, they're saying to me, well, Dad, why didn't you make me play the guitar? Why didn't you make me play the piano? Why didn't you make me do that? And I said, well, because I saw in other kids what it's like when parents make them do things against their will.
Yeah.
And maybe children don't always have as much free choice as we think they do. And parents need to be there to provide informed choice for them.
Right.
But most certainly, it struck me, and I can remember just thinking, seeing poor old Joy go through she had to separate from her parents. She had to go and live with these strangers up in Sacramento. She'd come and stay with Natalie and I for weekends.
I had to live with that coach.
Oh my God.
It wasn't just that I lived with a family. I lived with that coach.
Yeah, it was
crazy.
very, very crazy.
I think the only thing I can say when it comes to the decision of our family letting me go was, for my parents, I think it's this mentality of wanting to give your child the best opportunity. And so when you see a child who is extraordinary, right? Like me and Laura definitely shown some sort of talent. And when the top coaches in the country are saying, we want to work with your child, she has potential, it's really hard to say no. I think our parents coming from Korea and also my dad not growing up super wealthy and just seeing these opportunities that could potentially elevate their children in a way that they didn't have was part of the narrative that they bought into. And it wasn't just my buy-in, it was my parents' buy-in. And as a kid, like I always say, I don't necessarily know if kids know exactly what they want to do, but they definitely know what they don't want to do. And at that time, gymnastics was my world and I was fantastic at it. Talk about the immediate feedback, positive reinforcement is the world, right? Especially when you're an 8-year-old kid or a 10-year-old kid, they're telling you you're phenomenal at this and you kind of feed off of that. Feeling good about that and saying yes to those things because you're so great at it trumps all the other emotions that go with it. And so as much as I love gymnastics, it didn't matter that I moved away from home, I was sad, all those things. The goal was to be the best because the gratification of that was what I was aiming for. And all that other stuff didn't matter.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast on spirituality just yesterday. And the guy who was doing a fantastic job of helping point out that we are so motivated by two big things in life, fear and need or desire. He gave a great example. He says, can you imagine if you could wave a wand and give somebody the ability to sink every shot they shot at a basketball net, no matter what they did, everything they threw in the air went through the net. How long would it take for that person to become, I'm bored of this, I don't want it anymore?
Yeah.
Right.
And so the funny thing is that I think even as an adult, many people pursue something, whether it's to be excellent at golf, excellent at basketball, excellent at gymnastics, thinking that there's a holy grail that when I get to this level, then I'm going to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
But you never are fulfilled. And so as a child, it's even harder to think when you're at that elite level and everyone's saying you're so excellent. You need informed parent decision-making around you to help you realize that, yes, and what are the boundaries and what are the unintended consequences, long-term and short-term, of really pursuing something, and how do you keep it healthy? And it's, in retrospect, it's all easy to say those things down. This was back before people knew as much as they knew today. And so this is not an indictment against anyone's parents or anything like that, but most certainly I just do think about that motivation for wanting affirmation, for wanting the accolades is so fleeting, and it doesn't lead to fulfillment, which is why you're doing your podcast, because there was no fulfillment, right?
Yeah. 100%. Right.
Yeah. It's a moment of glory. It's just a moment.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking just last night as I came home late because I covered evening clinic at my job, and the boys, they're just so happy to see me when I get home, right? And it's like winning the Olympics every day, those kinds of things. And I'm also very aware that at any second, they're going to become teenagers and maybe not want to hang out with me anymore. Or if I do my job well, they're going to become grown adults, leave the home and live their lives as they should. And I'll be very excited for that too, for them. But also, everything is fleeting. The hard part is to sit with right now and be mindful about the love that I have for people, the love that I have for you two and our people, our chosen family, and to just sit with it right now, which can be hard because we sometimes want to think about the past or worry about the future. But anytime that I do, I just get that little enjoyment of that, like, I just won. For all that happened in the past, I get to win right here in this moment right now. Maybe it's like a mid-40s thing, and I don't have any Fs left to give in many ways. I've used them all when I was a small person. During this time of doing this podcast with Joy, it's hard. It's so hard. So many emotions. It's so draining. We're not used to speaking up about anything. But I was thinking not too long ago about when once Natalie sent Joy and I a text of your daughters taking a gymnastics class, and one of your daughters had beautiful lines. And those gymnasts out here listening, they know what it means when she had the lines. She definitely had that potential. And she said she wanted to continue on in gymnastics, and Natalie said no.
I think we all said no.
Yeah. And that's the first response was no, because of the trauma that we all went through together. You also went through it watching it. Natalie also went through it watching it. Our families and loved ones, everybody has right now as we speak. The adults will say, oh my God, I feel so bad. I should have done X, Y, and Z. We were all part of it. Everybody drank the Kool-Aid. It was the culture. There's nothing we can do about it. And for what it was, everybody did the best they could. The question shouldn't be, oh no, daughter has amazing lines and don't let her do gymnastics because, my God, what if she's good and she has the same life that Laura did? That shouldn't be the fear. The question should be, where the hell are the gyms that are going to be affirming and loving and safe and secure and put our athletes first and their families? If a coach does a good job, as a parent does a good job, we don't hear about the coach and we don't hear about the parent. You hear so much about the athlete. There's people out in the world, what they are like inside their sport. Everybody wants to know more. And the parents, they're there. The coach is there. But during that time, how much did we hear about the coaches? How much do we remember about some of the gymnasts?
We still know the coach's name. Bella Crowley's still massive. He's more massive than his athletes.
And it's wild
that's the sad thing. The athletes come, the athletes go, the coaches remain. And to some extent, they've all got their thing they're trying to make a go in life, and the athletes become the currency by which they do that, and they're expendable. And the athletes, they're here today and gone tomorrow, and they don't remember the fact that there's long-term impacts and long-term side effects. And the thing that I dislike about gymnastics is that you peak so early. And so before you're even 20, you've already passed your peak, right? I mean, to see Simone Biles do so well, and I don't know how old she is. I mean, what is she, about 20-something now?
26.
She's 26, and for her to be performing at this level at 26 is unheard of in my mind.
Yeah,
but most gymnasts are done by the time they're 18, 19.
That's right.
Yeah, you're over the hill.
Yeah,
it's brutal on the body. It is.
Yeah, no, it is. And so those injuries, they last forever, right? That's a lifetime during your body's most formative years of growing and developing and putting it through these amazing stresses. To develop it, to perform at any kind of high level, you got to really put in some tremendous training. I mean, who puts a 12-year-old into training 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, 50 days a year? Who does that? Right?
Yep. I know. Lindsay, we're doing research on that because you know that there's policies in college where you can't train a certain amount of hours, but not with children who do gymnastics.
Yeah.
Food for thought.
Anyway, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here and sharing your wisdom and memories of this time. It's eye-opening for me to hear your perspective. It really is.
Well, it's my honor, and my thinking all of this is, how do we learn from it, and how do we become better people from it, and how do we, benefit society around us from the lessons we've learned. So I take my hat off to you for what you're doing with your podcast, and I wish you the very best.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you,
love you.
Love you guys too.
Take
care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Coming up next on Hahnacity the podcast, Joy enters a whole new world of competitive gymnastics, beginning a transformation of her persona in order to survive.
So going from somebody who was incredibly nurturing, who was sort of like my second parent, who mothered me and nurtured me, into a stark difference of fear-based coaching, that was really hard. I think you shut it off when you're just like, I want to be a great gymnast. I want to be a champion. I want to make the 1996 Olympics team. So you turn off those emotions and you basically disassociate and you say, this is my job. You put your head down and you work. You normalize it and you tell yourself this is just part of life.
Join us on the journey, Episode 8, Atlanta Here I Come, on Amazon and Spotify. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, please reach out to us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and our website, hahnacity.com.
Share and follow us on Amazon and Spotify. Help us out and leave a 5-star review. Thanks.